Episode number 86 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Samantha Kellgren. Samantha is certified through ACE Fitness and the Integrative Women's Health Institute as a preconception through postnatal health coach. She currently lives in Asheville with her husband, toddler, and dog. After a hypothalamic amenorrhea diagnosis and undergoing IVF to have their son, Samantha made drastic changes to her unhealthy relationship with exercise and healthy eating. She now supports other women through the major mindset shifts around food and fitness it takes to get pregnant. Samantha has been featured on Scary Mommy, the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, Run Lift Mom, and the Beat Infertility Podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Samantha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So can you share with the listeners and myself your story, how you had hypothalamic amenorrhea due to exercising and how you've turned that around with diet and lifestyle changes, and how you've also been inspired to take that forward and teach others what you've learned?
Yeah. So let's see. I went down this road that ended up with IVF and kind of this total lifestyle change. When I went off the pill in really early, like February of 2016. So I had gotten into marathon running. I didn't really start running until college and got really into it. I moved to Chicago where everything is flat, so it's a lot easier to run long distances. And really fell in love with it, with endurance running. And, after my 7th marathon, my husband and I had been married for, I think, 3 years at that point, 2 years at that point.
And how long were you off the pill at that point?
So I went off, this is something that I talk to my clients about. I went off like when we were ready to start trying. So I went off in February, right after, a couple weeks after I ran this marathon, and no period. I wasn't really concerned the first month. I know that being on the pill, I was on it for 13 years straight. So I really wasn't too concerned that first month when nothing happened, because I was like, well, my body's going to kind of have to reacclimate and kind of, produce its own hormones. So I'll give it
right. So when you were running and going through this, doing the marathon, you were still on the pill and you were still getting your period, but it was like the period, it was kind of a quote unquote. So you didn't realize anything was wrong at that point. And then when you got off, that's when you started.
Yes, totally. Because I felt, in my mind, I'm running these races. I'm not crashing. I'm sleeping fine. I'm not, I don't have any of these signs of overtraining that I was like, well, if those were happening, I would back off, but nothing like that was happening. And I'm getting a period.
Right.
However, who knows when I lost it? I could have lost it that first marathon I did. I have no idea. So after 3 months with no semblance of a cycle, I went to my OB, and she basically said, we did the Provera challenge. So we did that 2 times. So I was supposed to, kickstart a period, induce a bleed. Nothing happened. I think we did a 5-day one where nothing happened. Then we upped it to 7 days. She was like, let's really bring it on. I'm like, I'm fine with that. I just want to get going. Nothing happened. So at this point she says, well, you may need to, cut way back on your running. And she said it so nonchalantly. And it was like, well, just cut off my arm, because that's a huge part of my life. It was, it's my main hobby. I ran 5 days a week. I did probably a race every other month. I was
doing how many miles a day?
A day, I would do 30 miles a week. So, my standard run would be 5 miles and then up to probably 10 on the weekends. It's what I enjoy doing. I went to a run group once a week. It's how I made a lot of friends. So it was, not just a form of exercise for me. It was part of my life. It's part of who I was. It's who I identified as. I was a runner. So for her to say that was like, I mean, instantly I'm like, well, how much can I run? Like, you need to give me numbers.
Yeah.
How much can I run? What's a safe amount? And she didn't, and they don't have a lot of time to go through the why with you, the looking at all the pieces. They're not going to tell you how to manage your sanity if you're told that you can't run as much. So, I barely backed off at first because it was so like, oh, like I'll just go, we'll do another test, or I'll like, maybe not run as long. I won't sign up for another marathon, but I'm still going to run. So we see a reproductive endocrinologist. We saw a fertility specialist pretty soon after that. Mm-hmm. And in my brain, I am expecting, I don't know what, I'm expecting to go in and to say, here, do this test or take this one thing and your period will be back. Right. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. And they did the test. They kind of, were looking at my uterus, and he said, you have no uterine lining. Like your estrogen is so low, there's nothing to bleed out, which explains why this Provera challenge didn't work. Everything else was working, but there was nothing to bleed. Right. And, my periods were pretty light on the pill, but I was on the pill. So I thought that was, just part of it. So, this started down this whole rabbit hole of, we tried an IUI, that didn't work, which isn't surprising. It was one IUI, the chances are pretty much like trying naturally, about 20%. And in trying the same combination.
All this time you weren't getting your period.
All this time I was not getting a period, unless they put me on birth control to see where I was in my cycle, and then I would get a bleed, which I still don't know how that worked. Right. But yeah, and so
but it's not a real,
it's not a real thing.
Right.
Yeah. So during this, as we're kind of going down, getting far in this path, I'm like, okay, I need to make some changes, because as we're paying money to do these tests, to do the IUI, to administer these medications, I'm like, I don't want to fully rely on that. I mean, even at the point when we're doing IVF, I'm like, this is not, what can I do in my power to make this the best chance possible? And I'm being told I shouldn't run as much. I'm being told I need to put on weight and body fat.
So he said this as well?
He said this as well. He's like, you need some body
surprised
fat.
Though that he did the IUI knowing that you're not getting your period. It's kind of a waste of money, because if you're not ovulating.
Insurance. I know, exactly. So, and you learn, I mean, that's why I love working with women, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what to ask, because you don't know.
I'm just surprised he didn't say anything.
Right. Yeah. And who knows who he's had in the past, and who knows, he didn't say at the very beginning, you have hypothalamic amenorrhea. Right. I mean, this was me doing a ton of research and nearly finding it on my own of, hey, this sounds like me. Right. Which I hadn't heard of. And so as we're going down this road to IVF, so this was, we started stems for the egg retrieval a year after I went off the pill. So at this point, it's been about a year.
And still no period.
No natural period, right. And so I'm still running at this point, but I am down to 3 runs a week that are maybe 3 miles. So I've cut back a lot, but I haven't totally stopped. And I've put on maybe 10 pounds. I've been eating, I was eating more, I'm working out less. So I was getting there. I wish I would have done it faster, which is what I like to help people with now, because it's hard. And people that don't love to run, that don't love a good workout, don't get it.
No, but it's like any kind of coping skill, coping mechanism. or kind of an addiction. I mean, listen, I'm addicted to
Yes.
hot yoga. I totally get it.
If
It's
someone
just, it's
says
like
you
an
need to stop,
addiction. It's
right.
because it, you know, it could be considered obviously within reason a good addiction to exercise. However, anything in excess isn't healthy.
Well, and that's, I think, what makes it so confusing and so hidden is that exercise is good,
Right. That's
right?
what we're
In
told.
general,
Yeah. I mean, it
exercise is
is, you
good.
know, to an
And it
extent.
is, it
Yeah.
is, but not when you feel like I have to get this 5-mile run in or I'm like going to be pissed off all day.
Yeah.
It shouldn't feel, I'm not an Olympic athlete. It
Right.
doesn't
And
matter
you
if I
do
run.
get addicted to the endorphins.
And you think
It's
that
a
you
real
can't.
addiction.
Right, it is. And it's this, you know, fueled by this positive feeling and this thing
Mm-hmm.
that the belief that you're doing good for your body.
Yeah.
So, you know, at this point I'm working out, but definitely not as much. And it's still stressful. It's still, and I always tell people, I'm like, you can't force a mindset shift, but it finally hit me. And it didn't hit me really until we had like done the first transfer. And it was a chemical pregnancy. And I realized that I was in this space of, okay, I'm gonna live this way now, and I'm gonna cut back my runs. But like as soon as I have the baby, I get to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I had this thought. It was just like, I remember being in my bathroom and just thinking, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to be, what good did this do me? Right. It had gotten to the point where it was clearly too stressful for my body.
Yeah.
Red flag, this is not good for you. And then when I really look back at it, it's like, well, yeah, it was stressful on certain days. There's certain days I didn't want to run. There's certain days I didn't feel good, but I went out anyway. And I don't do that anymore because it was not that was not the joy of running.
So you're saying that you kind of ignored your exhaustion or ignored your feeling. You didn't listen to your body fully.
Yeah. Yes. Because I think it had been this, I'm very routine oriented.
Yeah.
I'm very much like a plan. And this was my plan. So this is what I do. On Tuesdays, I go to run group. I run 6 miles. You know, it was, you're kind of in that such a, I mean, I guess it's a rut essentially of, this is what I do. This is my routine. I don't feel like doing it. Well, this is my plan, and not even thinking outside of that. And yeah, it's like, you don't even realize that you're ignoring it. You know, you don't realize that there's another way. And like you said, you know, it's an addiction because of these great endorphins. And I had fallen into that trap of, this is the way I get my endorphins.
Right.
And like, not like there's a whole other world of movement and activity that can support your fertility, that can support you and give you a positive mood boost. You know, it is not all or nothing. And you think it is at first. You think it is at first because it's what you've been doing and it's what works. But if it's not working for you, it's time to change. And it's hard to
realize, really.
Yes, it's hard to really realize. And you know, why I want to help women through this is because I had to find this outside support that wasn't there. Like I said, my OB can't sit there for 45 minutes and talk with me about other ways to relieve stress.
Right.
And, you know, the fertility specialist is really just looking at numbers and tests and explaining what we're doing next. And he's not sitting there saying, you know, this is really deeply the reason why. And did not go into great detail about hypothalamic amenorrhea. Everything I read on that was, I mean, you've probably talked about the book before, No Period, Now What? I mean, she's amazing. It's all this insane research that I didn't even know existed, that I wasn't pointed to, that I just found by looking up how to help myself understand. Because suddenly stopping running is not just, okay, I'll stop. I mean, I need to know why. I want to know some studies. I want to hear from other people who have been through this. And so now that I've been through this, I want to be that person to say, hey, you can do this. I did it. I cannot, 5 years ago, if you said I would not be running, I ran, I think 2 weeks ago, if that sentence would have never come out of my mouth. I mean, I would not have believed you that I could be happy doing that.
Right.
And I am Totally. I mean, I am finding different ways to move. I've started this dance class I go to once a week that brings me even greater joy
That's great.
than a long run. And it takes some time to find. It's not going to be a switch.
Right.
But you have to look for it. You have to have the initiative. And I often say it's kind of like reverse willpower. It's willpower to not say, oh, F it and go out for a run. It's willpower to say, I'm going to sit with this kind of feeling lazy feeling and get through it and realize I'm not lazy.
Yeah.
And realize there's other stuff to do. Realize that's not how other people see me. I think that people who really are very regimented about whether it's running or, like you said, hot yoga, whatever their workout is, people that are, highly accountable to themselves are so hard on themselves and no one else cares. No one else cares that I'm not running as much anymore.
Right. It's such a good point that you bring up. I mean, it's true. It's like it's within our own minds, or people's own minds, and it's really not what they think it is.
Yes, it's not true. And the only way to really realize that is to practice it. And you have to practice it. You have to practice, oh, I feel like I'm not that hungry and that's the biggest thing. Oh, I didn't run today. Like, I shouldn't have dessert. And it was that I do this and I deserve that. And taking that away, it makes life so much easier, so much less stressful. There's less guilt. And it's hard to get to. It's hard to get through it. And it's not like I'm 1,000% there. It's not like I never feel like, oh, should I have eaten that? Or I could probably push myself.
It's a journey. Yeah.
It's a journey. But I notice that I don't sit there with it. If I see a picture of myself from years ago, whether, weighing less or like at a race, and, instantly if I think, oh, I wish I was there again, or like, oh, I looked great, or, oh, I was so fast, my next thought is, wait, what else was on my mind that day? Like, actually.
That's right. Good. So you're bringing awareness.
Yes. Yeah. And that's all it is. And you just have to keep hitting in those points. You have to keep reminding yourself, I'm not lazy. Think of all the other things I do. Think of all the other benefits. I think that's what people get caught up in because honestly, if you have hypothalamic amenorrhea, the way to get it back is to eat more and gain weight.
Right. That's it.
There is no amount of supplements that is going to make your period start.
Right.
And is going to make you fertile. And you're not going to get to the other side if you don't put on some pounds. And once you realize that's not, I just did a post on this, but once you realize that's not the end of the world, then it makes it so much easier. You think, oh, is this the worst thing that could happen? Is that I am 15 pounds heavier? But I have a cycle and I can naturally try and I can support a healthy pregnancy. Obviously.
Yeah.
That is
so how did you finally get to, you obviously stopped working out as much?
Yeah. So we did, like I said, we did we only had two. We started with 19 eggs. We only had 2 embryos. The first one was a chemical pregnancy.
Right.
After that one, I totally stopped. I was like, I'm going to cold turkey.
Yeah.
If this is what I need, I'm going to stop running. Cause I didn't want in the back of my mind, well, what if I had done even would it have worked if I stopped? So I stopped. And, the very next month we tried again, we did the next IVF cycle and with our last embryo and it worked. And I was, pregnant. He is now over 2.
That's amazing.
And, I didn't run throughout the pregnancy. Part of me was like, well, I'm pregnant now, it would be safe. I know I coach runners. I know it's physically and logistically safe to run, but for me, I don't need to do that. Let this be my sign of, here's a long break. See how you do with it.
Right.
If you want to get back, great. And I did get back. I started running again when he was 3 months. I forget exactly, 2 or 3 months. And I would do run walk intervals. And I run honestly now sometimes once a week, sometimes not.
Yeah.
I run now, honestly, when the weather is great and I think I would really like to run today.
Yeah.
And that is it. that is. And it is, I think I had this false belief of, I run for stress relief, which was true, but you don't need to run for 10 miles for stress relief.
Right. So what other coping skills did you give yourself?
A lot of it, let's see. For one, I found great outside help. I found the group, the No Period Now What has a Facebook group. That was really good for support because it's other women that are actively doing this now, that are actively eating more than they're comfortable with, working out less, and sharing that journey. So that was really great because it's like, I found people that get that it's not easy. Right. Some people will just stop running. Great, eat more. And it's like, well, there's a lot of emotion tied into that.
Right.
Another thing I found was Circle and Bloom has great guided meditations. And that was really helpful to when my anxiety would get high. And this is after I was even pregnant. I felt like it even got higher because the stakes were so high at that point. So being able to sit and listen to someone calm me and realize that, hey, I'm just sitting here listening to something and I feel better. I didn't even need to move. That was part of it. And really just, like I said, it's just practice. It was the length of time, not running while pregnant. And then afterwards, have a newborn. And that's not the first thing in my mind. And realizing that, I didn't gain 50 pounds because I wasn't running.
Right.
I do still feel strong. When I went back to running and I would go for a run, it wasn't impossible to do. I didn't totally lose all my fitness. So really just testing it and seeing how it was on the other side. I think that just gives you that momentum to keep going. Just like if you were starting a workout regimen and you'd never worked out before, right? You keep doing it and you keep going and you find those things, those outlets that you like. I got much more into yoga. I would never have considered yoga a workout before because I wasn't sweating, because I wasn't having my heart rate up. I'm so much more flexible now.
It's amazing.
I counted the not running and more yoga. But I just allowed myself to think of any movement as a workout and is good for my heart, and to think that, what are my kind of core values? What are my actual top priorities? And does what I do match up with that? Because
that's
my core value and top priority is having a good activity level, and before I got pregnant, and getting a cycle back and having a healthy pregnancy, eating more is what supports that.
Right.
So if I'm denying myself certain types of foods, if I'm working out and I know the goal is actually to burn calories and it's not stress relief, or I'm pushing myself harder because I think I should, that does not align with where I want to be. And it's really, you just have to be honest about it. I mean, you've maybe been telling yourself these kind of false truths for so long that you really have to be honest of why do I like running?
That's so true. I mean, it really is. And it's interesting because it sounds like you found different coping skills or things to take the place of what you were doing, which was running. So you found another coping skill, which was meditation. And also you had a social circle with running. So then you switched over to, the forums or other people going through what you were going through. And so it sounds like, because I find that you really need a replacement in order to change behavior.
Just cut it off. Right.
Yeah.
I so agree. And that's I think the hardest thing is that you've built up, one client I had, she was a personal trainer and owned a gym. It's her world.
Yeah, that's her world. Yeah, totally.
And she's not just going to, say goodbye to her business. So we really worked through, how can you talk to these highly fit people and train them and not feel this intense jealousy, and
Right.
what can you kind of replace that with? So we kind of worked through some tactics on that and some goals through there that allowed her to still enjoy her work and be around it and not feel like she was depriving herself and not feel like she was an outsider now. Because it's
Right.
hard. If
It
that's
is.
your friend group, you kind of have to, if not change, you have to add in a supplemental group that supports this kind of new way that you're trying to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you finally get your period, and when?
Yeah. Yeah. He was about just before he turned 1.5. And I nursed through 14 months. So it was like about 3 months
Right.
after
That
that.
can just for people listening, that can
Yeah,
also postpone the
it can
period.
postpone it. Some people, it's not as sensitive to that, but apparently, and that's something I learned, something I knew, but really learned through the whole, through IVF, through stopping running, through having a baby, is just how insanely individual hormones are.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what's hard at first. And for a lot of people is, well, she's running marathons,
Exactly.
which she's not you. And you
Yeah.
don't know if she's did IVF to have that baby. You don't know,
Yeah.
you don't know. So for me, realizing where I needed to be and realizing that, hey, some people are still nursing and get their cycle back. Apparently that's not me. I remember it was like 6 a.m. or so. I had gotten up before the baby, and went to the bathroom and noticed blood. And I almost woke my husband up. I didn't, because he would not have been happy at 6 a.m. But I was so happy, because
Yeah, that's great.
I wasn't trying to force it. I mean, I was really just like in this routine that I kind of found and settled in, and it came back. And so it's been under a year since I've had it back, and I'm still like trying to figure out ovulation. Because that's a whole other puzzle of figuring out, I mean, it's funny because, I hadn't had a natural period since I was 18. I'm 35.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I have to like relearn my body, but it's been such a different experience. And I know
Yeah.
so much more about it. And I feel like I really earned it. I mean, I feel like I've settled in. We had a big move. We moved from Chicago. Now we're in North Carolina. So we're in this total new setting. I've got this total new routine. And just to know that, have this feedback from my body that it's at the appropriate level, feels really good.
Yeah, that's great. And it could be also, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, it could be hypothalamic amenorrhea can also range. I mean, you can you could stop ovulating before you stop your period. And then it thins out little by little, and it can eventually just completely go away. So there's a range of how overexercise or undereating can affect your cycle.
Yeah, and we don't know this until we have to know this.
Yeah. And then until we change something and bring it back.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I think that's the hardest thing. And I think, something big that I do tell people, especially, if they're going down the road of fertility treatment, especially IVF, it's emotionally expensive, and it is monetarily expensive.
Yeah.
And you want to give yourself the best shot at this. So
Yeah.
do not trust that it's just going to do it for you and it's going to work, because if you're not in the right space that your body needs to be, it's not going to be receptive. Yeah.
I just had a guest on earlier, and it's interesting because we were talking about how the fertility journey is such a wake-up call, and it actually is our body giving us signals to pay attention. And so she was saying maybe shifting the perception of the body, like being angry at the body for what it's doing, and rather saying, thank you for showing me what I need to learn.
Yeah.
It's a completely different perspective, and it really does your body does give you signals, and reproductive health is a reflection of overall health. So it's letting you know, hey, you need to pay attention, whether it's diet, exercise. Sometimes under exercise can also affect it. I mean, there's so many different,
right.
so it's all about a balance.
It's so true. And I think that that's what's so hard, because the general population, we need to exercise more. So
right.
Even if you're a fit person and you're looking up, get pregnant, what's best for fertility,
Yeah.
on every list it says exercise.
It does.
So
Yeah.
in your mind, you're like, cool, I'm doing that.
Right.
You read the fine print, it says over-exercise is harmful, but it's not the first thing listed, and you have to dig for that information. Mm-hmm. So, the great thing is that it is reversible. Right. You have to put in the work, but it's reversible. And that's just, I think that should be the biggest.
That is beautiful. I mean, it's such a great thing. It gives so much hope. And I've seen people with like great FSH numbers and AMH numbers with very thin linings because of over-exercise.
Yes, everything else could be, it's like that last puzzle piece. And I think that's, something else of the fertility puzzle, I guess, really, if you want to call it that, is that I just get angry when I see posts of like, this is, eat this one food.
Right.
Fertility. Totally. It's like, it is a huge picture, but exercise is a big, big piece. So if you're neglecting that piece of the puzzle, everything really needs to be in balance.
And I've actually read that it can affect autoimmunity, too much exercise. And can possibly affect the thyroid.
Luckily I had my thyroid tested recently and everything looked good. And it's really exciting. I know when I was marathon running, we did, I think it was just my annual checkup, and I think it was my white blood cell count was low. Mm-hmm. I think that's what triggered it. And so went in for more testing, and I remember saying what could be the running, right? And this was years before I even thought, I think this was before we were even married. And I had backed off some, or I just wasn't training. I think I just was like the winter and I wasn't running as intensely, as much, had a test, things looked good, went back, and I had just finished a marathon and it was back down. It's like correlation.
Yeah, completely.
So obvious. Yeah. And in that moment, I wasn't trying to get pregnant. I wasn't even thinking about how this affected fertility. I'm not asking about that, so doctors aren't talking about it.
Right.
So it's like the signs were there if you go back and look, but you don't know what to ask for. You don't know until, okay, I'm ready to get pregnant this month.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's typically what happens. People wait until that last minute when it's just not working, rather than preparing your body ahead of time. And when I get patients coming in saying, I'm not ready, I'm not getting pregnant right now, but I want to prepare myself, I'm like, oh my God, God bless you.
It's so
I love to hear
really
that.
Great. I've had clients contact me before they're trying.
Yeah.
And that makes me I'm like, how did you, like, what made you look up? And it's their type A, they're planners. And
but it's beautiful.
The type of person that I attract is, let's create this plan. Yeah. And let's, what
I like about them is they're not impatient either. They're taking their time, because it just doesn't go with impatience, fertility. Like I want to get pregnant. I want to get it now. And so a lot of times I say, when you're starting to create a garden, you're not going to just take any soil and plant seeds and just not think about it and put water on. That's it. You have to really think about prepping the soil and giving it what it needs, and the nourishment and the minerals and everything, in order to create a fertile, healthy, lasting garden.
Lasting, right.
Really, that's the key word, because you had talked about it, like just about, you want to keep the child and you want to be healthy and you want to give it like a full chance.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's something, even as we just started with the fertility specialist, is he said, my goal is not just getting you pregnant. My goal is to have you deliver a healthy baby. Yeah. And it was something like, oh, right. You're so focused on getting pregnant. Yeah. You're so focused on getting a positive pregnancy test that that's the very beginning of the journey. It is. You've got a long way to go. And how can you best set yourself up? Because that baby is going to take everything that you have.
Right.
I mean, that's great that they're going to get what they need, but you need extra. And that is why
Absolutely.
you shut
Need to
down.
sustain.
That's why you're not getting pregnant if you don't have anything extra to give. You know, your
Yeah.
body knows that, hey, we're barely surviving here.
Right.
We can't
That's
take
right.
on anything else. Your body is very smart. You just have to listen to it.
It sure is. And it's true. We need to listen to our bodies. And I've had patients come in where they were runners and very fit, barely any fat, all muscle. I could tell because I could barely get the needle in. You know, I really have to push through, and I don't want to push through, but it's like I want to get the needle in for
Yeah.
acupuncture, and it's all muscle. And of course, estrogen needs fat. You know, fat helps hormone production. So, you know, and then having the conversation, and I'm pretty gentle in my delivery.
It's a hard, touchy topic. Yeah.
But I've had a resistance where it almost started, it made me feel anxious. The conversation was very stressful.
Yeah.
Because really, ultimately, what I care about is you're wanting to get people or help people to get pregnant. And I knew that if it continued that way with this over exercise, it wasn't going to work.
Right. Yes.
So, you know, I was trying to say it in a very gentle way because it is a tough thing and you don't want to have a confrontation, you know, with your patient.
Right. Yeah.
But it was a tough conversation, and, you know, I'd have to just give some information, literature, studies, so to support what I'm saying and say it's not just me. This is what it is. But I remember even posing the argument or the question, what would you do if you were pregnant? And I thought, oh, you know, she decreased the amount. No, same exact thing. I see people do it all the time. Everybody runs. I've seen people running throughout the pregnancy, and so I was like, okay, this is a tough thing. So now I'm realizing that I'm dealing with a very set belief, and there's not much I can do about it. I mean,
yeah. I
unless
mean, I
the
think
person's ready.
research is the best. I think finding that community of people who have done it and been through it. But yeah, just because it's safe, you can run through pregnancy. It's fine.
Yeah.
For some people.
Yeah. For some people.
For some people. And you're going to take it way back if you do. And, you know, just of like, what's the most important thing? Is there another way? I did prenatal yoga throughout. I did acupuncture. I started doing acupuncture after that first failed IUI. Still do it to this day. It helped with so much other stuff. I have Raynaud's where my fingers will go numb. It's gotten so much better. For one, just adding body fat. Well, one, moving out of Chicago.
Yeah.
To be honest. But just the acupuncture, I feel like really helped with stress throughout the pregnancy. I mean, I went throughout pregnant. I went the day, so we had a scheduled C-section because he was breech, which we tried to flip through acupuncture, and he was just stuck. But since I knew when I would be having him, I didn't have to be at the hospital till 2. So at like 10 a.m. I had acupuncture appointment. That helped a great deal throughout. And just because if you're working with an acupuncturist that's knowledgeable in fertility, it's just this other sounding board for a totally different view than your OB. So it's really nice.
Another thing is also just breathing, because one of the things that feels so good about exercising really heavily is that it forces you to breathe a lot. And when you're not doing those types of exercises, you don't breathe as much. So if you incorporate, this is what I say to a lot of people who are starting to get, well, one of my patients became pregnant, had a great pregnancy, was exercising until she had placenta previa and was told to lay off. And she was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I said, breathe. You know, at least breathe and give yourself some breathing exercises so that you're getting this fresh air, oxygen, and you're still getting that vitality and that energy flow. So that's another way to do it.
Oh, just so much. Just getting outside.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Getting outside and taking some deep breaths, and you just feel like a new person. I mean, walking is my favorite thing now, just to go on walks in our neighborhood. Now I'll put a podcast on, and that's what got me through that initial reduction of running was I identified, okay, what do I like about running? What is it? Well, it's time to myself.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little
That's such
too
a
much
good
of that
thing
now.
to do. Yeah.
But time to myself, being outside and moving my body. Right. So I would go on, like 45-minute walks, and I would either walk the dog or just go by myself. And there's a good trail by our place, and put podcasts or music on. And I came back, it's like I ran, I came back with good ideas. I came back just more calm. I had been outside. I felt invigorated, and I didn't go on a 10-mile run. I went on a 45-minute walk.
Right.
And it's just amazing if you allow that, and if you let that be your exercise, and if you just keep doing that, that becomes your new routine. I think that's a big thing, is that women may try to cut back, and after a week they're antsy and they're anxious, so they go back to it.
Right.
But if you stick with it, that will become your new routine, and you need to create a new routine. I think is mostly what people need, is that they feel lost because what they've been doing for maybe a decade, they can't do anymore, and they don't know what to do. So if you plan for it and you make this new routine that is good for your overall body, it's going to give you that sense of, on Tuesdays I do this, if that's what you need. I found this other class, this is the yoga class I go to. So you can have that routine still, but it's stuff that is all actually supporting your hormones.
Right. And we had spoken on the pre-talk about this one question. What is a common myth or belief that you hear from many people who've lost their periods over exercise?
Belief that, like, comparing yourself to someone else, of, well, she got pregnant, or, well, she's fine, well, they're pregnant running, they, whatever. It's so individual, and you got to listen to that. Also, just the calorie factor. Women are severely under eating.
Right.
I was running marathons and probably eating 1,800, under 2,000 calories, because you see what you should be eating, and nearly everything is wrong.
Yeah.
You need to be eating so much more. To get your period back, like 2,500 calories, whether you're not moving at all or just going on walks and doing some yoga.
Right.
You need so many more calories than you think, and that you're not going to implode.
Right.
You're not going to put on. I started eating so much more. I basically quit running, and I think 10 to 15 pounds heavier, and I've leveled out, and that's where I am.
Right.
And so I think that there's this conception that you can continue to exercise, you can continue to undereat, and then it'll fix itself. Or that if you're maybe eating enough, that enough is maybe 2,000 calories, which it's not, and then you can continue to do this exercise. But it's both pieces.
Right.
You need to eat more, and you need to stop the intense exercise.
Yeah.
And maybe eventually you can add a little back in.
Right.
It's not like you can never go for a run. It's not like you can never do something intense. But not every workout can be intense.
Right.
Just study after study shows that it affects runners, it affects CrossFitters. It's all these intense exercises that clearly have a negative impact on your fertility. And you can't, unfortunately, you can't get around it.
No, you can't. That's the law of the body. It's just the nature.
Yes.
It's going to, it doesn't matter what your opinions are on it.
Right. It doesn't matter how much you like a good, long run. It's not going to be good. And you just, like you said, you need fat.
Exactly. That's right.
More
and also
than
to get nutrients.
Yeah. It's but once you really stop fighting that, I think, and once you see what happened, just treat it as an experiment, treat it as your new training of, this is my new regimen, this is my new thing I'm following, this is my plan, and see there's no downside.
Right. There's a perceived downside, but
there's a perceived downside, yes.
But ultimately you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I do agree, and you have to replace it with a different behavior.
You do, because you can't just cut it off. I think that's, when that OB said, okay, you need to stop running, it was like,
But then what?
Well, that's a lot of hours of my week. What do I do?
Right.
So yeah, you got to find something, and to not treat it as just a supplement, and as and it might be temporary, the extremity of which you kind of cut it off, but to not just treat it as a space filler, but treat it as, this is, I'm going to find, and maybe you don't find it right away. Maybe you think it's yoga. It's not. Maybe, you know, it's going to take some experimenting to see what you really truly enjoy, but allow yourself to really truly enjoy it, and don't look for that exact same feeling that you get.
Right.
Look for something similar. What do I like? Like I said, I was like, what do I like about running? Well, it's time to myself, it's being outside, get to listen to music. How else can you get that that's friendlier to your body? Is it going on a bike ride? Is it walking? Is it swimming? Is it doing cross stitch? You got to find something else that you are excited to do, and that makes you feel relief, and makes you feel not, especially if you're struggling, not so focused on that you're not pregnant.
Right.
How can you bring some excitement back in?
Yeah, it's a good point. And also, when you had mentioned earlier on, when you were running, that you felt grumpy when you weren't running. So it's also that kind of relationship. You want a healthy relationship with your exercise.
Yeah.
Where
Yes.
it's not so
It shouldn't
extreme.
feel, it should never feel like punishment, but it shouldn't feel like, if I don't do this today, I have failed.
Yeah.
Like, exercising is a bonus.
Right.
If you are able to fit the 30-minute video in, if you're able to go out for a walk, that's like icing on the cake. It shouldn't be, I have to do this or I've somehow failed. I can't check it off. I'm lazy. It shouldn't ever be, I can't have dessert because of that. It should not make you deserve anything.
Yeah.
It should be, you get to move. How do you want to move today?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Such a good point. So for people listening who are going through this right now, how can they reach out to you? How can they find you?
Yeah. So my website is simplywellcoaching.com. And on there, you'll get a little pop-up that says, are you too fit to get pregnant? And so it'll email you a little quiz. You can see what you check off. I mean, before I went through all this, I think I checked off all 12 boxes. It's not irreversible. And then it comes along with some 3 mindset shifts to kind of get you in that, okay, how can I start to change and not make it feel like this like end of the world thing.
Right.
I'm on Instagram at, again, Simply Well Coaching. So sharing some of my stories, sharing some quick actionable tips that you can take. You can also schedule a call with me through my website. It's a little mindset jumpstart session. It's free. It's 30 minutes just to kind of talk through where you are now. And I always like people to leave with like one thing that they can put into action that day that's going to get them kind of started on that path. Because it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah,
I like connecting people with other resources that I, kind of piece together on my journey, so that you don't feel alone, and so that you feel kind of supported through all of this.
Yeah, it really all comes down to support. When you feel supported, and also when you feel like somebody can relate to you and has been through it, it makes all the difference.
It makes such a difference. Yes, that you're not an experiment. That it's
exactly.
Okay, it's been done. I'm talking to a real human that has done this.
Right. Exactly.
So true.
Thank you so much for coming on. I think that your message is so important. It's so prevalent. It's something that I think a lot of people think exercise is the end all be all. It's great, so let me do it a lot, and
or the better.
And you don't realize that it can impact fertility and really health in general.
Yes, it's too much of a good thing is what it is. It's too much of a good thing. And so, to bring back that balance and not say you can never exercise, but okay, let's get you back down to something that is beneficial to your mind and actually to your body.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was great.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.